ICQ Podcast episode 286, Peanut the Dstar App. Well, hello our fellow amateur radio enthusiasts and welcome to this, our 286th episode of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast. Supported this episode by Keith Schultman, Kilo Romeo 7, Romeo Kilo, and Richard Perzina, Golf 8, India Tango Bravo, along with our monthly and annual subscription donors. In this episode, Martin M1LRB is joined by Leslie, Golf 0, Charlie India Bravo, Edmund, Mike 0, Mike November Golf, and Ed, DD5 Lima Papa, to discuss latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin M6BOY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is a feature on Peanut the Dstar App. Well, we were just doing some research the other day, and we've now realised it's now been 6 months where we've had constant support from listeners to help keep the show advert free. So this episode, Richard Perzina, Golf 8, India Tango Bravo, along with Keith Schultman, Kilo Romeo 7, Romeo Kilo, are our donors. Now, Keith sent us along a message saying looking forward to meeting you all at Hamvention. So there's 8 of us confirmed for Hamvention of the 11 presenters. So yep, we certainly will look forward to catching up with you and other listeners at that show. As always, you can keep the show advert free by visiting www.icqpodcast.com/donate, where anything you send away is always greatly appreciated. While you're there, we've just got the new polo shirt sponsorship opportunity available for the last couple of weeks, heavily backed by American amateurs and, I say, some in Australia and Cyprus, but only one solitary UK donor so far. So, I say, if you'd like to get involved and have your name on the ICQ Podcast Presenters shirts as a donor for that there, check out that donation link, and say you can get your name on an ICQ podcast shirt for the next couple of years or so when we'll be using those, and those will be debuted at Hamvention. And now we join Martin, Leslie, Edmund and Ed to discuss latest amateur radio news, including the effects of the US government shutdown on ham radio and how our young amateurs are promoting our hobby. I hope you enjoy.
Hi, Mrs. B here. Please sign up to our newsletter. We won't share your data and only send you relevant podcast information. We thank you for your support. 73's Mrs. B.
Well, hi guys. It's the News Roundtable for episode 286. We're moving along quite rapidly towards that 300 mark. Tonight, I have Mr. Leslie Butterfield G0CIB. Hi, Leslie.
Hi Martin, glad to be back again.
Oh, I'm glad to have you back. We missed you a couple of weeks ago, but good to have you with us. We also have Mr. Edmund Spicer, M0MMG. Hi, Edmund.
Hello, Martin. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, and you're back with us this year, which is good. Mr. Bill Barnes can't make it at the moment. We feel your pain, Bill. We do feel your pain. I got an email from Bill saying that his missus is dragging him around the shops at the moment, so Bill will be back with us shortly, but he didn't make it home in time to make the recording. And Mr. Matthew Nassar, unfortunately, won't be with us for a few weeks. He's got a few housing problems to sort out. So once he's sorted, I'm sure he'll be back. But standing in for him,
I can lend him a tent.
You can lend him a tent. It's a bit cold for a tent, Leslie. But standing in for him, we have Mr. Ed Durrant, DD5LP. Hi, Ed.
Yeah, hi. Doesn't seem like a month since I was on. What is it? Somehow, no.
No, it was a fortnight.
Yeah. So we're putting the poor listeners into even more pain.
Oh, don't. But it's good to have you back, mate. It's good to have you back. Let's say it'll be a fun one, and let's hope Matthew gets sorted soon. And so it's great fun anyway. And thanks for doing it for me, Ed.
Yeah,
right.
No worries.
All right, our first news story, and kind of, I suppose this affected Edmund and I a little bit, and I was in a bit of a panic. It said partial government shutdown impacts ham radio. Well, yeah, it does impact ham radio and how you get your licenses, but I was a bit worried I wasn't going to get my ETSA. So if I can't get that...
What is the ETSA?
Well, it's kind of like a visa, I understand, if I'm right.
Oh, okay, I'm with you now, Okay.
Yeah. But I applied for mine on Sunday morning and Wednesday morning. I was told I got it, so I'm happy as Larry. So not everything was shut down. You had a similar experience, didn't you, Edmund?
I think on exactly the same time frame as you. Yes, I made the application on Sunday, and I had read on some websites that if you're lucky, the approval can be instant. But I got a message saying that the system was thinking about it, and I instantly had that sinking feeling, thinking along the lines of, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. But happily, I checked this evening, and after 72 hours of thinking about it, the system decided that it was going to let me in to the United States of America. So for the first time in my life, and quite possibly the only time, I don't know, I will be leaving European soil and setting foot on American soil, which I'm looking forward to enormously.
Yeah, well, it proves we're not a pair of dodgy geezers, doesn't it?
You speak for yourself.
True. Ed, what's your thoughts on this one? Because it did impact amateur radio really, rather than our ETSAs, didn't it?
Yeah, that's right. On the ETSA thing, though, I actually got mine earlier on, so I think we're just about all of us set for the trip to the colonies now.
Well, yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, the good news, of course, is that they're all back at work now, at least for the next 3 weeks. There's a little bit of delay on some of the license handling, but the only ratings can be 1 or 2 days later than their expected deadlines for getting this work done. So well done to the FCC getting back to work there and getting the motor running again and getting it done so quickly, because they did actually warn the ARRL that there could be a delay before they got rolling again. But it looks like they've pulled out all the plugs to help the amateurs in the US, which is nice.
Yeah, I think that's good, because in many ways, if you've been studying and then you take your test, you get your pass certificate, and then you're suddenly told you can't have a license for a few weeks, that would be a real crippler. Absolute crippler, wouldn't it, Leslie?
That would be against our Human Rights Act, that would be. I mean, I could just see the steam coming out of people's ears on that one. That would cause all sorts of consternations. But I did have visions when you were talking about the computer was thinking about it, and we've got this TV program in the UK where it says the computer says no. I just had visions of that for a moment. Yeah.
But I mean, in the old days in the UK, we used to have to wait nearly a month.
That's true. Yes,
didn't we?
It was an old manual system. 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. That was normal then. Now, if it's not done instantaneously, we get the hump. But, especially during a shutdown, I'm laughing a joke, but getting things done like that during a shutdown period is very, very good indeed, and thumbs up from me.
And we should also welcome the new FCC Commissioner, Geoffrey Starks, who has also joined them now. So they're now back up to full capacity of bosses. So hopefully that'll help things roll along as well.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So it looks like for the moment, if you pass your test in the States, you should get your license fairly quick, unless the government offices go into another dispute and decide to go on strike.
We don't do politics on it.
Well, we don't, but just in case, But well, nice.
Careful, Martin. There wasn't a strike at all. It was the employer that was the problem, not the employees.
All right. Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
We're just glad it came through quickly.
Yeah, we are. Okay. Moving on to our next news story, and I like these stories because when students promote ham radio, it's all right for the older amateur like myself, well, the team here. But when a student, say a 16-year-old, starts promoting our hobby, that to me is a really good thing. And a Japanese amateur has done a really good job of promoting our hobby, hasn't he, Leslie?
I've been reading through this story. I'm sorry, I just can't pronounce the name. How do we pronounce the name? I do apologise.
Looks like Yuki Fukumitsu.
Right, I'll keep it as Yuki. Excellent work. Yeah, the youngsters are better at doing this than us because we look at things through our eyes. And for the hobby to progress, which is what it's all about, it's got to be done with different eyes and new eyes. What have we missed? don't assume that we know it, or we've done it this way works. No. You've got to have new people, young people with fresh ideas. And I just think this is a really, really good story. And I wish the person well. And I think it's great. I like the bit about my friends don't quite understand the fun of amateur radio. It just made me chuckle with that one. It just made me smile. It's a really good story, and I wish Yoki all the very best.
Yeah. Well, on the friends don't understand, I remember there was a couple of youngsters, a member of our club, and they were about 14 at the time when this happened. But one of them got his licence, and the other, his friend, went round the house to take the mickey out of ham radio, because he's like, why you done that, blah, blah, blah. Nobody... And he got round there, and within half an hour, he'd convinced himself that he wanted to get a licence, and ended up getting, and came on a course and got a licence. So it's, in many ways, it's promotion. And I think the Americans, I think the Americans have a thing of everybody's an Elmer. Yeah, you can't be an Elmer on every subject, but everybody can be an Elmer, and you can Elmer somebody else. So I think it's a good one.
If you think about it, if right, there's one licensee, and if we encourage just one person to come into the hobby, that's an awful lot of people just come into the hobby. Just one person. That's all it takes. Yeah. And the impact on this hobby would be massive.
Yeah. Well, if you take, for instance, in the States, I believe there's in excess of 700,000 amateurs in the States.
Over 750,000 now.
Yeah. I'd say 750,000. Yeah.
Yep.
If every one of those amateurs converted one person,
that's all it takes.
1.5 million. There'd be 1.5 million amateurs in the States. Yeah. It's a big one. Do you want to go next on this, Edmund? Ed, sorry.
I'll fight you for it, Edmund.
Go on.
Well, strangely enough, I often get called Ed rather than Edmund, the full-length version. And, of course, in Morse code, it's very quick and easy to send. So, by rights, I am Ed most of the time. I only get called Edmund on this podcast to avoid confusion with your good self, Mr. DD5LP. So, yes, I'll happily fight you for it.
That's interesting, because the reason my name became Ed rather than Edward was on a VHF UHF field day for the Hull and District Amateur Radio Society many, many years ago, where one of the other club members said, I've got the shortest name here. Look, it's Tom, T-O-M. And I went, no, you haven't. Mine's Ed, E-D. And that was the history of when I started to be called Ed. So, it's, Anyway, okay, this Japanese young gentleman, remembering, of course, that there's actually, is it 3 million amateurs in Japan? I know there's more there than anywhere else. Somebody might correct me on that number, but it is the centre of amateur radio. The majority of them have the lower class license, so I think they're only like VHF, UHF. But the fact that Yuki here has actually tried to, or is promoting to the same age group, and I think that's important. The easiest way to say it is the magic of amateur radio. And there's so many parts of amateur radio. It's often been said it's a hobby of 1,000 hobbies or 1,500 hobbies or whatever. There's so many different parts, and nowadays with microprocessor kits and also building microprocessor-based devices for amateur radio, and also use of smartphones, use of internet, use of technology. Amateur radio has always been about advancing technology, and who better than to be involved with advancing technology than students in schools? It also helps their career as they go forwards. So, it's an ideal thing that amateur radio in schools is something that I think we have as a bit of a theme in this show tonight anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right there. So, would you like the last word on this then, Edmund, since I call you Edmund?
Yeah, well, I agree with what the other two gentlemen have said, and certainly from my experiences with Thinking Day on the Air and Jamboree on the Air, and Thinking Day on the Air is coming up quite soon, folks, get that one in your diary. It's somewhere in February from memory. It's certainly true that if you can get enthusiasm from one of the youngsters, that will then spread amongst the other youngsters far more than if you had 3, 4, 5 adults who are all very enthused, trying to get the enthusiasm going amongst the youngsters. So the fact that a young person has initiated this is very good indeed. And as Ed has mentioned, you could say to somebody, amateur radio, as if it was a single thing, but there are so many hobbies within the hobby. And coincidentally, I was having a conversation earlier this evening with my wife Paula, who had seen a little light in the sky and was wondering what it was. And I said, oh, I wonder if it was maybe the International Space Station. I've no idea if it was. I didn't look into the schedules as to if it was going over or not. And then, completely unprompted, out of nowhere, she suddenly turned around and said to me, I think that's really fun or cool or interesting. I can't remember the exact word she said. When the International Space Station's going over and I can stand in the garden and see it, and at the same time you're a bit further down the garden pointing an aerial at it, a 2-meter antenna specifically, Yagi, and from that you get what sounds like an old fax machine noise coming through your radio, and from that you get a still picture on your TV screen. I think that's really, really cool, or words to that effect. Now, if you'd said to me 30 seconds before that, is your wife interested in any facet of amateur radio at all, I would have said to you, probably not.
It'd be snooze straight away, I would have thought.
well, the way I do it, amateur radio, yes, probably. But so you never know, even if on the face of it, it doesn't seem a particularly enthralling subject, or a subject that youngsters in particular would get excited about. There are so many different hobbies within the hobby that you only need one of them to come across one element of amateur radio and get really excited, and the enthusiasm can just spread like wildfire. So yeah, good on him.
Yeah, I think that's the right thing. Great. And just as a side note, Mrs. B, who has no intentions of getting an amateur license and told me at long length she hasn't, don't think she doesn't understand it. Every now and again, she comes out with the correct answer, and sometimes it'll be Colin and I discussing something, and she'll go, well, it's this, isn't it? Well, she was listening. She's been listening.
I reckon you're in with a slight chance with her, Martin, because I understand that under your direct supervision, she passed a greetings message on 2 meters to somebody.
Yeah, she passed a greetings message, but I mean, okay, we're going to go a bit way off topic here, but I remember about 20 years ago, I had a couple of license-free walkie-talkies, and we were on Guernsey, and I'd gone off to do... it was Guernsey. I'd gone off to do something, and in them days, with your mobile phone, I rung her mobile phone, it went from Guernsey back to the UK, and then UK back out to Guernsey, and it was like a long distance call, and it was an expensive call. So I got a couple of license-free walkie-talkies, and I'd gone off to do something, and I gave her a shout, and she had one as well. And she said, oh, I'm just going into the cafe to get a cup of tea. So I said, well, look, order me a cup of tea, and I'll be down the cafe in about 5 minutes. So I arrive in the cafe, and there is Mrs. Butler with a whole group of people around her, and she's standing there with this handy-talkie in her hand saying to them, this is really good, you know. It doesn't cost you a phone call. You can work this. She's doing a whole 9-yard sales pitch on them, and they're all taking it in, and she sat down, and I thought, hang on a minute, you're not interested. But she knows more she lets on, I think, to be honest.
She can't be cured now. Once you've caught the knack, that's it.
I think she's fighting hard not to, but I think it's getting there. Anyway, let's move on. We've gone way off topic on this. Hopefully entertained a few people. Now, Ed, you spotted this one. Bloomington South School were on the air and in the press. And you say somebody else you work with on Amateur Radio Newsline, isn't it, Ed?
Yeah, that's right. Neil, WB9VPG, Neil Rapp, is a chemistry teacher at Bloomington South School in the US. And his group, his radio club, has got featured on the front of the local newspaper on the first page even. So that's actually quite nice, and it just links into, as I said, we've got a bit of a thread of youth and schools and things into amateur radio, and this is another example of it. They actually won their section of the school club roundup competition. And it all gets explained in reasonable text for the normal Joe public, that they actually worked every US state and 33 countries, including Canada, and as far as with Algeria, Bosnia, Canary Islands, Russia, Namibia, Svalbard. Not sure what that is. And Portugal.
It's I think is it the Arctic Circle?
I was going to say, it sounds Nordic, doesn't it, somehow? But in any case, so they had a great success. The kids are over the moon about it. And the school as well are very happy having their own radio club. And we were discussing this before we started recording. And we all said if only we had something like this at school when we were at school. But I keep hearing more and more in the US, this is happening more and more, that there are school and college clubs either restarting or being started new. And I think that's great because, as we said in the last piece, if people get an interest when they're young enough, they can give so much back, as well as, we're helping them. They'll help each other. The more younger people we get involved in the hobby that can work together with each other, the better the hobby's going to be. And as we also said, there's so many different facets. This particular one is a purely a article about the club doing very well in the club's in the school's contest in the US. But yeah, full marks to Neil. As we said, he's a fellow podcaster on the AR Newsline group, and he also has his own Ham Talk Live podcast as well. So very much involved in ham radio, but also very much involved with children, teaching kids chemistry and also radio. So well done. And this was actually raised by K7JOE on an article he put on QRZ.com. And the fact that it's on the front page of the Hoosier Times, or the Herald Times, Hoosier, whichever one it is, I can't remember the name now, is very good indeed.
Yeah. And as you say, it's promotion. Leslie, your thoughts on this one?
Well, I was just looking at that Svalbard because it rung a bell with me, and I was just trying, where do I know that place from? And one of our members of our club did an expedition up there, and my job was to sort of find the nearest amateur radio place, and we did find it. It was in a wooden shed, but basically it's north, find the UK, northwest, and keep going. Arctic way. So that's where it's, as far as the story goes, I think it's an excellent story. Good on them. It's putting amateur radio in a good light, and that's what we need.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Edmund, did you have any teachers at your school that were fired up about anything like this?
I don't remember. It seems a very long time ago now. I don't remember anything along those lines. I know that my science teacher in about 1991 brought a broadcast radio in that I remember playing about with, but that was FM, medium wave and long wave rather than short wave, and certainly not amateur radio stuff. I vaguely remember at junior school we had on one occasion a couple of Morse keys with buzzers that I seem to remember were connected together by 75 ohm coax cable like you would use on a TV down lead for some reason. And we had to go at sending Morse code. I think that was when I was in the infant school. But again, it was, I don't know why we were doing that, but it was looking at Morse code out of context. It wasn't in a radio context. So no, I would have loved to have had something like this when I was at school. It might have got me going in the world of amateur radio earlier than I did. Because although I've been interested in radio in all its forms for very many years, it was only 2009 that I passed the M6, so it's only the sort of most recent quarter of my life that I've actually been doing amateur radio. I know in this country several universities have radio societies, don't they? But sixth form colleges and schools, it just doesn't seem to happen in the way it does in the US, and I wonder if maybe they've got the right idea by there being a contest or competition element to it, because even if a load of kids at a particular school aren't interested in amateur radio, if it then gets down to the level of being more successful than the rival school half a mile down the road, then there's a bit of competition will often get young people going, won't it, Martin? So yeah, back to you.
Yeah. I mean, competition's fun. I mean, I must admit, I go back, my science teacher was a lovely guy, and he understood physics, but electronics and electrical stuff wasn't his forte, I would suggest, because we never really got into anything like that. And I'd always fiddled with things, even when I was a lot younger. I remember bringing radios home from jumble sales and things like that, and my dad getting really annoyed and usually blowing them up. And then as I got older, I got into this sort of thing. But I think the biggest problem is with a lot of this, and what Neil is doing is, if you've got somebody that's passionate about a subject, then that your passion shines through. And
it's infectious.
If you're interested and you have the ability to promote that hobby and show your passion, other people will get interested. When I first looked at amateur radio, I was going to do it at night school back around about 1977-ish, 76, 77. And the guy teaching the course just wasn't interested. He was there just to collect his money, and he wasn't really interested in telling you anything much, and he was just so boring about it. And he put me right off the hobby. But it's anything. It's not just amateur radio. It's all these things. If you've got somebody who's passionate about what they're doing, then it'll come through.
Martin, it's not just amateur radio. It's a lot of things. If you walk into a room and you've got the sunshine over your head and it's infectious, it rubs off whatever your attitude is, whatever your thing, it rubs off on everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
And they will pick up on that. So if somebody is enthusiastic and real interest in what they're doing, what they find is the attitude of the other people changes. Going there miserable with your chin on the floor and only there for the cash. Oh,
Yeah, I know what you mean. And the other thing about amateur radio, and I'm going to close up after this, it's not just about amateur radio. Amateur radio is more than that. It's practical science. It's actually
getting your hands dirty.
Getting your hands in there. It also teaches you languages, potentially. Also teaches you geography. It's quite aligned to an education. It's almost a mini education in itself. So
finding the upper limits of a 2N305 power transistor until it blows up at the back of a power supply. Yeah,
we've all done it, Leslie, blown things up. But, I remember one of the youngsters at our radio club putting a LED across a 9-volt battery. Didn't last very long. Blew the top off the LED. But he never done it again because he knows what he did wrong the first time. You know, it's education. He said, "You're going to get upset with me." I said, "What, for a 10p, for a 10p or a 10-cent LED? No." "Have you learnt something?" "Yeah." "Well, that's all you need." Anyway, we've gone long on this one. So, but it's good to see that, schools do well on this sort of thing. We kind of moved over our next one because I cover Peanut in our feature. So originally it was a news story saying Peanut's back, but it is because that's what's covered off in our feature. Moving on to our next news story, public consultation on electromagnetic field regulations. And this is one of your big pets, isn't it, Leslie?
I was involved in some. Well, I'm not going to say what organisation, but I was involved on putting together some advice with a group of people, very, very knowledgeable in the field, and the thinking was that either just do the work and then file it, and if in the future this issue crops up, we then had the research to be able to tackle it. Now, most 99.9% of radio amateurs, it's not a problem because they're low power devices in normal terms. They're not of commercial levels. But that saying, this particular subject does creep its head up every now and again. We did have a student who was doing a project for a university, and she needed some radio equipment, and the university sent me a letter on licensing, and one of the topics they had was RF safety, and I was quite confident I was able to put down that the devices are low power, they comply with this, that and the other, write down exactly what was required, and we sent that to the university, and they were very, very happy indeed with what we've done. The thing is that, yes, it cropped up, and we was able to deal with it, and I think that's the right approach. As some people sort of say, no, that's all nonsense. No, you've got to be able to do the work. Say, look, these are low power devices. This is. And lay out exactly why they comply to whatever requirements they are. And we were able to satisfy the authorities easily, which I thought was the right approach. Over to you, Martin.
I agree with you, Leslie. I agree with you. And that's one of the things that I enjoyed most about doing my American license, is because you're allowed to have much higher power levels. It was things I had to start taking into account that I don't have to in the UK because I'm never going to be using 1.5 kilowatts.
Yeah.
But, running 1.5 kilowatts from your car, I reckon your alternator would suffer a bit.
Sort of the equivalent of an electronic canary. The electronic starts playing up at that sort of levels.
Yeah. Ed, what's your thoughts on this one?
Okay, well, I'll just give a bit of background for the people who maybe don't understand completely the topic we're talking about. This is about RF safety, as been mentioned. Any antenna will radiate RF, which some people say can be very damaging to health, but it's certainly in a high RF field, you don't want to be there for any length of time. Hence, commercial broadcasters, this is very, very relevant to. But it is also relevant to amateur radio, when we've got a lot of houses close together, you've got children playing, we do need to be sure about where the radiation is going. And it's not just the power. Even 400 watts is high power, and you're allowed that in the UK. We're allowed 750 here in Germany, 1.5 kilowatt in the US. But even at 400 watts or even 100 watts, when it's at a very high frequency, like UHF, SHF frequency, then it becomes more dangerous. So we need to understand all of that. In the olden days, you'd be going out with measuring equipment, measuring it all, working out where the field, the radiation field or the RF field goes from your antennas. Nowadays, thankfully, we can do it all with calculators on the computer. In software, yeah. And as Leslie says, there are certain actually international regulations that need to be conformed to, and all of these measurements need to be taken. And it's also not just the power you're running, not just the frequency you're on, but also what mode you're using. If
Correct.
you're using sideband, is it compressed audio on the sideband? In other words, clipped or processed in some way. That also increases the intensity of the RF. All of these things are taken care of in the calculators. There are calculators available from various organizations. And a bit of a history here, as most of the listeners know, I actually lived in Australia for 19 years. The last 2 of those, I renewed my license and started into amateur radio again. And at that time, the Australians got the ability to run 1 kilowatt PEP on the HF bands. And they lost it after a year. And the reason given that they lost it after a year was the regulator there was not happy that the amateurs understood that how to measure and how to calculate human exposure to radio frequency fields. And because of that, they lost which was only a test year, so to speak, but everybody was expecting it to carry on. They lost the right to have a kilowatt and went back down to 400 watts again. So by not doing this work or not understanding this work, they lost a benefit. So it's important that we do all understand this. And in fact, in Germany, it's a legal requirement every year to calculate and document what the radio emissions are. And this can be something like, okay, the other thing it depends on is the height of the mast the antenna is on. If it's a simple wire antenna, if your mast's high enough, the radiation level down on ground is going to be not so important, nothing to worry about. If your antenna wire is close to the border with your neighbour's land, then you have to be careful because some of it's going to be going over into their area. And again, as I said, if you've got young children or something like that, there can be worries. I mean, there's been a lot of worries living near cell towers. So the last thing we want is people saying amateur radio is the same as mobile phone cell towers, because we aren't. And but we have to be doubly careful and document that, okay, as long as you're, 6 meters away from the wire, it's not going to affect you. So therefore, you do not let the public within 6 meters of that piece of wire on the antenna. So all of that is very important. Get it documented, and as Leslie said, if you document it and put it to the side, you've got it if somebody comes and asks for it. And whether it's a legal requirement or not in the UK or in the US, I know in the US it's part of the test, so that's good.
Well, that brings me back to the work I did at the time. It depends when you're applying for planning permission how the local authority interprets it. And unfortunately, that's not consistent because some of them use the commercial, what's the word I'm looking for? They say you've got to
measurements.
You get commercial measurements, and to amateur radio, that's not appropriate.
Yeah, but even when you've got your antenna up there and you've put a big amplifier on the end.
Yeah,
you're not going to apply for planning permission again, but you do need to go through the mathematics or let the program do it for you, and just to say, okay, it's still safe. Or I'd better move the mast. I'd better move the mast in a meter or something from the boundary with the neighbour, for example.
Yes, I mean, like I said, other countries, other European countries, you have to put it's like a planning permission document together to say that you've shown that you've taken all this into account. It's not difficult. It just requires a bit of thought, and there's a bit of sitting down to work out. But once you've done it, it goes a long, long way because someone says, "Have you done this, and this?" Well, yeah. There's a document. Oh, and then they're happy.
Yep, exactly that. Better to be prepared than say, "Oh no, I haven't. I'll do it for you, and I'll get back to you." And they go, "Well, you put that up without understanding what the radiation hazards would be from it." Yeah. That's not a good position to be in. So yeah, even if you don't legally have to do this on a regular basis, I would definitely recommend that the listeners do indeed get the programs, and there are free programs.
The knowledge is out there. It's just a case of putting it together and sitting down and studying and just working through it. But I would have to get my files because it was quite a while since I looked at that field.
Yeah, I mean, in Germany, the regulator provides a free Windows program.
Yes,
so you
I remember that.
Put your numbers in, and in Australia, I believe the WIA still has a link on their site to a free program that was written by an amateur. And the amateur used to work for the regulator over there, so he comes from the professional field. So he knew what had to be measured and how it wanted to be laid out and how it wanted to be presented to keep the regulator happy, which is fair enough. So this is what this is about here in
Brazil.
Brazil. Thank you. Yeah, we shot off on this and we didn't mention who it was we're talking about. That's right. Yeah, that's right. So in Brazil, they're basically saying they have to do the same, which is the same. It should be the same the world over very soon.
I can see it coming. It's just one of those things you think, yeah, this is going to be on the horizon at some point.
Yeah, well, I remember when I did my American exams, and I'm sorry if I've mentioned this before, but pretty much every amateur in the UK I asked the question of, and I can't remember the exact wording, so bear with me, but it was something like, if you're transmitting 1.5 kilowatts and you're in close proximity, what is the most dangerous frequency band? 80 meters, 20 meters, 6 meters, or 23 sims? And everybody in the UK goes for 23 sims because it's a microwave band. It's actually 6 meters because large parts of the body are resonant around 6 meters. So,
yes,
yeah,
that's right.
And that was something that's stuck in my mind ever since, and I do wonder whether that's why some of the people suffered in the early days of radar, because they're probably in close proximity to, I would have guessed it would have been predominantly VHF and the old VHF television in the UK, how much of radiation do we suffer from it?
See, we do cover technical stuff on the ICQ podcast, don't we?
We do, but we've left Edmund out in the cold. So, Edmund, come on, what do you think?
Well, there's not really an awful lot I can say here because this isn't a topic that I've given much consideration to, mainly because I normally run QRP or near QRP power levels, but listening to you two talking about that, you've got me wondering now.
Well, it's one of those things, Edmund, where a knowledge of it you'll have an idea of where to look and what to do. And if you suddenly go out with, say, your club and they're putting up a 6 meter station, for argument's sake, running 400 watts, you know that you don't want to be too close to it. You want it a fair way away. And I can't give you the exact measurements, but it's a knowledge of the hobby, isn't it?
It's applying common sense, really. Yes, there are calculations which I've used, but you don't want people near it. You want a safe distance away from it, no touch hazards, anything like that. Me, I work on the railways. This is bread and butter stuff on safety, but I know people groan when we mention that. But so I'll go back to what I was saying, that this subject does crop up now and again, and it's always better just to do the homework, and that way it keeps them off your back. And that's my view on it.
Well, I think we've done this one well, and guys, have a look. Not necessarily tomorrow, but certainly have a look and see if you find out more about it, because it is a subject that's worth knowing about. Right, well, that pretty much closed our news stories up tonight. There's only 4 of them, but we've still gone 40-odd minutes, so we've done pretty well on those 4. And now I'm going to ask the boys what they've been up to since the last time they've been on the podcast. So, Leslie, you've been quite a while, so you must have done a lot.
Well, the first bit, the one I've been working on, and this is really ironic given the last subject, was I've been playing with Whisper. And I've got one of these little whisper light devices, and I've built myself a little filter and all that type of stuff. So anyway, I'm on the website and I'm thinking, oh, it's got 900k, and that's not bad distance rating meters. No, that's doing rather well. And okay, and at which point I'm on the website, and I thought, okay, well, let's reprogram this thing. I need to sort of decrease the power, and let's see what Whisper really can do. And I looked at the screen in front of me and I burst out laughing. And the reason was because I had it on 10 milliwatts, and it doesn't decrease any further than that. So I thought, what do I do now? Where do I go now? So that was the first thing on Whisper. And on the other thing is, I decided to splash out at the beginning of this year, as my PC was, as you probably gathered on previous podcasts, was, shall we say, a bit creaky. So I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to go out and buy myself a brand spanking new one. And I did. I went out and got myself this Acer Windows 10. My last one wasn't quite DOS, but hey, it was a Windows machine, but hey, it worked. And I also made a mistake with this last week, because I'm clearing up, and everything all works wirelessly. There's no leads or anything. And all of a sudden, I'm clearing up, and I thought, okay, let's get this going, and it's not working. And I thought, no, I've only had it a month. The keyboard's not working. The mouse isn't working. What's going on here? And I had a bit of a moment. And I looked on the floor, and there was the little keyboard dongle that plugs into the back of the PC had fallen out. And I plugged that back. I thought, I looked at it, I thought, what's that? And I picked it up, plugged it back into the set, and everything will burst into life again. So, a few moments, but it's a good machine. I had to get something new because, like I said, the last one was really creaking, and it's been going great guns at the moment. So anyway, that's what I've been doing here.
Yeah, well, sounds like you got yourself now sorted out. So that's good. Ed, what have you been up to? More antennas, and it's only been a fortnight for you, isn't it?
Yeah, what have I been doing? Clearing the snow and the ice off the drive, I think, is the summary. We've had some pretty long-term winter here, and I keep trying to get. In fact, today I'd planned to go out this morning to do some tests on a new antenna I've built, but with minus 7 degrees and chill factor down to minus 15, and snow forecast for where I was going to, I decided it might not be the best time to go out and test a new antenna. Why do we always want to do these things in winter? It's crazy. Anyway, but that's the main thing. Actually, funnily enough, Leslie just reminded me, I've also just got a Whisper Light as well, and that's what I use to test this antenna when I put it in the garden. But I actually want to get it out in the clear somewhere. But the Whisper Light unit is quite nice. Previously, I had been using just a program on my smartphone to generate the whisper tones, just putting it into the microphone of the one of my portable rigs, do it that way. But having this Whisper Light thing, just such a small little unit, it is very convenient when you want to do this kind of testing. The other thing I've been doing is writing some articles on propagation and my interpretation of how things work up in the atmosphere. And hopefully I've sent them to a few people, and they said, yeah, that's actually better because I understand it, because it's in less technical terms and more, so what does it matter, how does it help on this band, etc. And a couple of things I've done there. One is to explain what we currently have, even today or tonight and tomorrow, the fact that when a coronal mass ejection happens from the sun and it throws all those solar winds at us, and followed by the plasma, etc., you actually get an improvement in radio conditions from the point when it shoots it off to when the actual plasma and all the other rubbish hits the ionosphere and takes the noise level up. So been doing that, and then also trying to evaluate using ionosondes how to realize when you might get short range connectivity rather than DX. which, since I'm chasing SOTA activators and I live down here in Central Europe, the majority of them usually are too close because of the skip distance, so my signals go straight over the top.
Shades of NVIS.
Yeah, NVIS is one starting point, and then I go on from that, because NVIS won't work at the distance that some of them are at. So anyway, so I've been writing some articles, and they're up on my website at either dd5lp.com or vk2ji.com if anybody wants to have a look at them. But yeah, that's what I've been doing the last couple of weeks. So because if I can't get out to do the radio, I'm sitting around here and writing about it and researching it.
Sounds good to me, Edmund. Ed, sounds good to me, Ed. And
Okay.
you two are going to confuse the hell out of me with Ed and Edmund, and Edmund likes to be called Ed, and I've lost it. And I'm going to spend a few days with you both together.
That's right.
So,
yeah. So you'll have to start calling me Ted or something.
Ted, no. Well, I call Martin Rothwell Budgie, but that's only because he has a habit of using CB language, and instead of saying good buddy, he says good budgie, which winds people up. But anyway, that's another story. Edmund, what have you been up to?
Yes, and another thing we've got in common is that we both speak German to various degrees, so that'll make us even harder to tell apart, Martin.
Well, that's good. We can talk to each other, Edmund, and he won't understand.
Hey, I was there when you was talking to Michael, the head of the Austrian Amateur Radio Society, and you had this big long discussion with Michael in German, which was fine. I know Michael speaks English very, very well. And then you turned to me and you spoke to me for about 2 minutes in German, and I'm thinking, what the hell's Ed on about? And then I said, when you finished it, can I have that in English, Ed? And you hadn't realised you had been speaking to me in German. You were just speaking to me as if, and that threw me that day.
Yeah.
But,
These things happen.
Yeah. So go on in, Edmund. What have you been up to?
Yeah, Mr. DD5LP's German is wipe the floor with mine. French is the one that I'm really good at. But you mentioned earlier in the podcast, Martin, about amateur radio can help with languages, and one of the big advantages is when you work somebody in a foreign language, you're practicing speaking it, whereas if you simply watch TV in the particular language or read articles online, you are testing or improving your understanding, but you are not practicing your ability to actually speak the language. And amateur radio comes up trumps in that respect as well, doesn't it, the other Ed?
Yeah, and funnily enough, as a nice lead into the feature later in this show, today I was listening to one of the reflectors, and it was obviously in France. I was listening to it all in French, and I was thinking, I can understand about half of that because my school French is a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, it's, what do they say? Geography, languages, technology, yeah, safety, electronics. There's all of that in the hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. So to get back on track with what you were asking about, Martin, I've binged on amateur radio in January. I haven't done any at all, except on the weekend of the 19th and 20th of January. I was involved with a special event superstation, Golf Bravo 5 Whiskey Oscar Romeo, where we operated for, originally the intention was 48 hours non-stop, but it ended up being nearer 40 hours because it got to about 1:30 on the Sunday morning and I couldn't stay awake any longer. But it was a real eye-opener because the setup was QRO in every sense of the word, and it's everything that I'm not. So I tend to muck around on VHF. This special event station was HF only. I tend to use low power, relatively low power anyway. This station, we were able to run the maximum UK legal limit on every band in existence, pretty much from top band through to 10 meters. And it also was very different to what I'm used to in terms of antennas. I've got bits of wire around the garden, which I will now be reviewing in the in the light of one of the discussions that we've had this evening. The antennas here for GB5WOR were seriously good. They were up very, very high, strung amongst some very tall trees, and it does make a huge difference. For example, we had a doublet for 80 meters that was 20 meters above ground, so a quarter of a wavelength. My inverted V for 80 meters doesn't come anywhere near being a quarter of a wavelength above the ground, which is good for NVIS, which is really what I want it for. Whereas at GB5WOR, we were hearing things on that band 24 hours a day that I would never, in a month of Sundays, hear at home. I think, almost heard some US stations at one point, deep into the night. Don't think we worked any US stations on 80 meters. So if you ever get a chance to go to a special event station, but one that's sort of real sort of major undertaking, a bit like the kind of super stations that the Cray Valley Club have a history of putting on, for example, I would really encourage people to do it. And there is a short video of the special event station on YouTube. If you stick the call sign in, you'll find the short video that I made. And it was a real success. It's to celebrate the Worthing District's Amateur Radio Club's 70th birthday. And we certainly got ourselves on the map. Over 110 spots on the cluster from all four corners of the globe. Didn't quite make DXCC. I think we were at 65 separate countries. And a variety of languages were spoken, some to a better standard than others. I had a go at speaking Italian and Turkish, even though I don't speak those languages at all. So that was quite good fun. And in other news, today, in a moment of madness, I ordered a Pixie 40-meter CW kit.
Yeah!
Just to have a stark contrast. And I am carrying on using the club's call sign for VHF, mainly GX1WOR throughout the year. So one of my silly little challenges is to build the kit, get it working, and to have at least one unscheduled, non-prearranged contact on 40 meters using the Pixie.
I reckon the Pixie is a great little project. I know they're about £3 each, but there's so much learning in those little bits, like learning how to components, learning how to solder, capacitors, resistors, diodes, you name it. There's an awful lot of learning for such a little amount of money. And they do work. Not great, but they certainly put out a signal, and they certainly receive. And I reckon for the money, they're really, really good value kits.
And of course, there's also the small matter of polishing up my CW.
Absolutely.
Well, on the Pixie front, Edmund, the most likely cause of them not working, in my opinion, apart from the obvious of a short circuit or a dry joint, is if you get the inductors round the wrong way. There are two inductors in the kit, something like a 10 microhenry and a 100 microhenry. And if you get the 10 and the 100 round the wrong way, it kills the oscillator and it doesn't transmit or receive. So just be aware, because the color bands are very, very similar, and if you get it the wrong way round, just spend a little bit more time looking at it before you put them in. That's what I suggest.
Oh, that's a brilliant tip. Thank you, Martin.
Okie dokie. Right, what have I been up to? Well, Chris Howard roughed me up to do a club talk. I ended up doing the club talk that everybody thought you were going to do, Leslie, when you did your fault finding course. Chat.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I enjoyed yours.
We had
a lot of people
posters
thought
all the way around the room, didn't we?
Yeah, you did, and it was very, very good. I think the bods though thought it was going to be, these are some practical tips. So I did the one they thought they were going to get, which was a follow-on from what you did anyway, so that was good. That seemed to be quite well received. I was quite surprised.
Martin, there's a phrase you used once, and it's most faults are due to the nut attached to the main dial.
Yep. agree with that one. Yeah, so that went quite well. We've talked about for a long time 2 meters being dead in London or anywhere, and nobody using 2 meters. So for giggles the other Saturday morning, or Saturday afternoon rather, I grabbed the rig, I set it to 15 watts, simplex, I went on the calling channel and I called CQ. And I worked 4 stations within an hour in London, albeit one of them kept me on for a natter for nearly 40 minutes. So there is life out there if you call. We've often said that. Had a new member get involved with the club, and he's quite interesting. I've been showing him some of the technology, and he's has an electronics knowledge. He comes from BT. He kind of remembers radio like about 40, 50 years ago, or the technology being like that. And I've been showing him the new technology and trying to show him that, yes, there's still the old sets, you can play with them, but then SDR is something, you ought to have a look at or be aware of, and explaining what amateur radio can do. And he's already said he wants to do the foundation with us fairly shortly. The only other thing I would say is my biggest pain at the moment is my shack computer. I actually had a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse given to me, so I set them up on my shack computer because they're small and I can move them out of the way when I'm not wanting to use the computer. The problem is every time I key up on HF, I lose the Bluetooth. It interferes with the Bluetooth, so I get a bit of interference. So I shall probably have to go to a wired keyboard and mouse to get over that. But just an annoyance. And Edmund, can't promise I'll be able to work here, but I'm going to be down in the Worthing area this weekend, so on Sunday, and probably a bit more regular because somebody I knew when I was about 5, I found out lives in Worthing, and not far from where my son lives. My son Lee lives, so real interest. So we're going to meet up with her at some point in time, Carol and I as well. So that's what I've been up to. So all in all, I think we've all had quite a bit of fun, boys. So listen, I'd like to thank you all for joining me tonight. As was mentioned on the last podcast, we're going to say 73s to each other. This is not the end of the podcast. There will be other bits after this. So don't just switch off after this. So I'm going to say 73s to Leslie, Mr. Leslie Butterfield G0CIB.
Cheerio.
Yeah, 73s, mate. 73s to Mr. Edmund Spicer, M0MMG.
73 Martin, it's been good fun as always.
Yeah, enjoyed it, mate. And 73s to Mr. Ed Durrant, DD5LP. 73, Ed.
Yeah, cheers.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
And now it's time to have a look at the news in brief with me, Colin M6BOY. And news here that a product that we looked at back in December, PocketRxTx, has been upgraded to version 3. As you would expect, many updates and improvements over version 2. There's a free trial available and a pro version, and this is a product that works on Android only. The app is all about remote rig control, so you basically connect onto your rig and you can work away from there. It basically removes the need of using Skype or any other type of audio program to and from the rig. A free Java based network server is provided so that your rig can be connected to a Windows, Mac or Linux PC and then to your local network and onwards onto the internet. The USB and Bluetooth, when supported by the rig, are direct connections and therefore need no PC to transfer the remote CAT commands. So we've got a link on the ICQ Podcast website for version 3 of the application for you to try out there. So it is Android only, no iOS version. And if you're interested, check out episode number 282 if you didn't listen to it, where Ed Durrant talks about how to control the rig from Android. So the next news story now, we have a new FCC commissioner. Geoffrey Starks is now being sworn in, so the FCC now officially has its full 5 complement of members. Geoffrey Starks, who's a Democrat, succeeds Mignon Claiborne on the commission. So he now takes office on the 30th of January. He formerly served as the Assistant Bureau Chief in the FCC Enforcement Bureau and in the US Department of Justice. He says that he's deeply honoured to serve as Commissioner of the Federal Communications Commission, and he thanks the President of the United States for this exceptional privilege. Over the last few weeks, since being affirmed, being a public servant is a calling to serve a mission bigger than yourself. Throughout my career, I have focused on protecting the most vulnerable and holding wrongdoers accountable. In my new role, I shall not only continue to pursue those goals, but also look forward to working with Congress, my fellow commissioners, and the FCC outstanding staff. So say congratulations to Geoffrey, and say hopefully you'll have a successful tenure on the FCC's panel there. And we've rounded up our news in brief with a last news story here that the CWops Awards are now accepting nominations, and this is the award given for the advancing of the art of CW. So the purpose of the award is to recognise individuals, groups or organisations that have made the greatest contribution or contributions towards advancing the art and practice of radio communications by Morse code. Anyone can nominate, and it should be emailed to awards@cwops.org. With a copy to the secretary at CWops.org. But we'll also put all this information on ICQpodcast.com as you'd expect. In order to be considered, a nomination must be received by the 1st of March 2019. So if you know someone who has been furthering their hobby in the CW mode, feel free to make them nominated. Well, now we head over to our features episode, which is a feature on Peanut the Dstar App. Hope you enjoy.
And now, what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast. Well, hi guys, and welcome to this feature. Tonight, I'm joined by Mr. Ian Abel, G0CIB. Hi, Ian.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ian. For those of you who listen to the podcast regular, Ian was with us about 6 months ago talking about network radio and gave us a great insight into that. Moving on from that, there is another VoIP application, a VoIP application that, for those of you who say it's not real radio, it does have radio involved, and you do have to have a call sign. You also can connect to the D-Star network. The application, quite interestingly named, is Peanut, and it's written by a guy called David, PA7LIM. But tell us more about it, Ian.
Yeah, well, Peanut's quite new, and it's come out. It was developed by, as you've just said, PA7LIM, also PD1AEU, and Juliet Hotel 1 Tango Whiskey X-Ray. So it's a bit of a collaborative effort, although David has done quite a lot of work on it. It works on a mobile phone or any Android app above Android 4 platform. So it works on any device that's got Android on it, and it allows you to talk internationally. If you're talking to other radio amateurs, you have to register, and you get a registration number. So therefore, if you are a naughty boy and you don't behave, then you can pull the number, and therefore that gets you out of the system. So it is moderated in that sense. And what happens is you can talk on it peanut to peanut, which means very good quality audio. It's very clear, very easy to understand. But you can also, using it, cross over to different platforms using the XRF reflectors. Now, what happens is the XRF reflectors that are in there, better known as transcoders, they cross over to the XLX network, which is the multi-protocols system that incorporates D-Star, DMR, and Fusion and P25 and that sort of thing. So you can be on your mobile phone or device, you can be talking on the XRF network to somebody who may be on a D-Star radio. And the point about it is you do not need a D-Star or any radio that has those other features to talk on it.
So that is what makes it very useful. It's proving to be quite popular. Normally, like tonight, I'm looking at the dashboard, which you can do online. It's all live. And if you go to the website for the Peanut, which is peanut.pa7lim, and then you can follow other links there to get onto the dashboard from that site. There's a lot of information about Peanut on David's website, and all the information that you need is on there. Now, when you get onto the dashboard, you can see who is connected. At the moment, there's 144 people connected worldwide, and there's also a last heard column, and that continually changes as people come on. So you can see where the activity is. The latest download for the Peanut is version 1.51, and that's what we're all running. And when you begin to use it, you will find that there are over 50 rooms that you can go into to carry out your conversation. A lot of the rooms that are listed are in language labeled, and the other rooms are the gateways that take you across to the XRF reflectors. They're all listed on the phone. One thing I like about the whole idea of the Peanut project is it takes amateur radio forward. And yes, some people do say, oh, well, it's not really amateur radio. But I think that they've been saying that for about every time a VoIP. I mean, I've been involved with VoIP for over 20 years, and that happened from day one. And I've been involved in amateur radio over 60 years. And to me, it's always what's coming next, the next new thing that comes in. And I like it. Yes, you can go on 20 meters and have these what I call quick contacts, 5 and 9, 73s, QSL via the Bureau. But the one thing about the Peanut app, which I particularly enjoy, is that you can talk to an hour to a guy in Korea or some other country and get into real detail about a particular project. I was talking to a station over there, and they'd got a problem on their they just got the G3 download for the repeater network on ICOM. And we had a very detailed hour-long discussion about that problem and what all the issues were. So you can really have that dialogue. And I think that's very important in amateur radio as well today, where you can use features like this. And of course, the obvious one, if you're traveling and you're visiting a lot of different countries and you take your mobile phone with you, your Android phone, it doesn't work on the Apple phones. It only works on Android at the moment. Well, they don't allow experimentation on Apple phones, so it won't be available. But if you take your Android with you, say you went to like North Korea, it would allow you to get on from North Korea if they've got Wi-Fi available, because it works over Wi-Fi, and make contact with other amateurs all over the world. When you're taking and using the system. And of course, there's other apps as well you can put on the Echo Link, and you can also use the Zello, and there's many different things on Zello and gateways and all the rest of it. The audio on Peanut to Peanut is superb BBC quality. It's very clear and very easy to follow and understand, and I think it's particularly useful, or could be, for amateurs who are getting on a bit and maybe going deaf, or maybe having other hearing problems, and because of the clarity of it, it would allow them to continue to enjoy and use their hobby, albeit that they're not maybe on the HF and with all the QRM problems and interference that you can get on those bands. Certainly using Peanut, it could be very useful, and I think that I've been trying to get the Radio Amateurs Old Time Association involved with it, and reach out, and maybe they could encourage some of their people to use it. Plus, of course, it does represent the fact that a lot of people around the world today have got mobile phones, and of course, people can get on the radio or on Peanut and have conversations without any additional expense. I was talking to a station in Sri Lanka, and here they've not got Dstar over there, but he put the Peanut app on his phone. He didn't know anything about it, so telling him all about it. Good news travels fast. And he had it on, and therefore it allowed him to come into the D-Star world from Sri Lanka, which he'd not been able to do before. So it's a question of facilitating opportunities for people to experience different modes and different systems. Now, it may well be in the future that in Sri Lanka they do get D-Star and have a D-Star network as a result of the experience of him trying it out and giving it a go. Now, another website that I went to on QRZ for information was N9KO, November 9 Kilo Oscar. He's got quite Calvin, they call him. I met him on Peanut yesterday. And on his website, it's got a lot of information about Peanut, Android devices, using it, how it works, access points, and all the rest of it. So anybody who might be interested can have a look at that. The system does cross over not only to the D-Star Plus network, it also connects to the G2 network if you use certain reflectors. And you can find those out when you come on and start to explore the system. So that's all available. I've been on it now for several months, and I use it every day, pop on and off. And we've got free Wi-Fi locally on the buses, and it allows me to go on the bus, instantly connect via the bus Wi-Fi to Peanut, have a contact, and because of the audio clarity, it's easy to do. And of course, anybody traveling, providing you've got Wi-Fi available, then you can have the contacts. David PA7LIM went to Tokyo last year, and he was able to talk about Peanut at the Tokyo Ham Fair, which is held in September. And as a consequence of that, he got some interest from the Japanese amateurs, and it is going quite well in Japan. A lot of amateurs from Japan are coming on and using it as they are. I'm just having a quick look now at the dashboard. We've got Brazil in there, we've got Germany, Austria, Australia, Italy, States, of course. So Korea, all these are on and happily chatting away. I regard what's happening now in amateur radio is the fact that people are beginning to make things happen and put things together, a bit like Zello, a bit like Lego, really, the building blocks of the hobby. And so therefore you don't necessarily have to have specific radios doing specific things, because people make it available for you to do, to make these contacts. You do need to register. And you can register off the website to get the code. And you do need Android 4 and above for it to work on your device.
So, Ian, as I said to you before we started, lots of interesting things with network radio and Peanut and all those sort of things. I mean, us on the ICQ had a get-together on VoIP. On the VoIP app on Boxing Day. So the quality is good. And how would I have ever got to talk to people in 6 different countries, armchair copy, without it? So I think it's great. And I think the other good thing, and you mentioned this, is that Peanut is for amateurs only. If you haven't got a call sign, you ain't getting in. What do you think, Ian?
Well, that's exactly right. And I think that because it's the amateur community, that's what makes it work. And it's amateurs talking to amateurs. And I mean, one of the problems that you've got now, especially with young people trying to get them involved with the hobby, and I mean, the RSGB push this thing where the young people in the schools talk to the hams in space. And they think that's a great way to promote the hobby. I'm not sure myself. And when I asked the question, how many of these school children have actually become radio amateurs as a result of their efforts and project, then they didn't know the answer. So there's a question mark there. And I'd like to see such things much more audited. In the fact that if they're doing all this effort, then, I'd like to see them doing more effort in helping older people to get involved with the hobby. And I think that more on the U3A front, which is the University of the Third Age, with amateur radio, or maybe go to Saga and make more contacts and do more with that. Because there's 9 million elderly people are lonely in the UK, so we're told, and it's a rich field for a gold mine for it to be mined and get people talking and interested. And my thoughts would be that when you get a project like this, I think radio clubs could probably reach out more and go into homes where amateurs may be, for instance, who have not been allowed to have a radio with them, or and get on the air, and radio may be not suitable antenna wise and things like that. Using an app like this on a mobile phone, which does not raise any eyebrows whatsoever, would be ideal. And with the clarity of the audio and the fact that they can talk internationally on it just by having the app on the phone, being shown how to use it, and it's so easy, then I'd sooner have them on the air. I mean, if I ever get in one of those places, I certainly would be using this rather than watching Jeremy Kyle in these places. So that's the point. And it's meant it to be inclusive rather than excluding people who may no longer be able to be part of the hobby, antenna restrictions and things. So it has a lot going for it. And when you also think about the future of amateur radio and where it will be in 10 or 20 years, a lot of people who have been critical of VoIP in the past, and rather like the HF business where the contacts can be quite quick, 10 seconds can be a long over, and 5 and 9 73s QSL via the bureau and all this next approach. Or there are some people who have maybe 20 150-foot towers working DX and winning contests. It's not everybody's in a position to do that. And for people who may be on a limited budget, they can really participate in amateur radio and also communicate internationally. And I think that's a great point. So that's another reason why I'm so keen for people to give it a go. Anybody wanting any more information about the project is quite welcome to email me, g3zhi@hotmail.com. And I'm also okay on QRZ, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions on the subject. And as I say, certainly when you're looking at what is involved in this sort of project, now this has been developed by a Dutch radio amateur who is also a software developer. But I would say this: why can't we get maybe young people at university in England who may be interested in amateur radio to do something similar? We have an English version, maybe to be better, maybe to be different, writing apps for the Android, and developing it. And I think that in order for that to happen, you've got to put the time and effort in to try and get these people and show them what we're doing and what's possible, and maybe interest them because the use of computers, the use of software, and it's a different approach to getting people involved with the hobby. Yes, I'm not saying there's anything wrong in talking to people in space, hams in space, but it's not what we do every day. Easily, and we can't ring NASA up and make us scared and say, oh, I'd like to talk to a spaceman or woman and make that happen. No, the chances of an ordinary amateur. And what worries me is that if you get people involved with that sort of project and then they get a license and they say, right, I've got all my equipment now, how do I speak to this amateur in space? And they say, well, you can't really. You have to make arrangements, and there's that sort. It's not the real hobby that we have. So maybe that's something that this could be done. And somebody who was clever. I was at a university event last summer in Sheffield. Now they have an amateur radio repeater in Sheffield. And one of the students there was showing me, he was on the electronics course and computer course, and he was showing me what a resistor was. And because I hadn't said where it was or anything, and I said, oh, it's all very interesting. And I said to him, have you ever thought about being a radio amateur? And he says, oh, what's that? I've never heard of it. And you see, there's a failure there to really get it across. And by the way, I will say this. I don't just use exclusively VoIP. It's just a tool in the box. Every day I'm out. I'm monitoring now the local repeater on RF. I go for a walk every day, and I'm on the radio for at least 90 minutes on the local repeater, which is connected to Echolink and IRLP, but I'm on RF with it. So I don't have a problem either being on RF or on the phone. And I think I'm quite open-minded about it. It's the contacts that matter. And I think it's so important that as a community, the activity is what it's all about. Now, my local radio club, the Maltby Amateur Radio Society, which I founded 35 years ago, along with another radio amateur in the village, G4BVV Peter, is closing down because the people that go there now, they don't have that enthusiasm to keep it going, and they don't have the people to keep it going, and therefore it's closing, it's finishing, and they're just going to sell everything, all their assets, and that will be the end of it. And that's sad, really, that we live in a community now in amateur radio where you see these things happening. And of course you do get the other end of the scale, like Peter at the Essex Radio Club, who do so much and are very positive about everything to do with the hobby, and they do so much for amateur radio in the community. And I think that's the key to it, to really get out there and publicise the hobby. I mean, when I was involved with the Maltby Club, I used to be on the radio, the BBC radio, and talking about what's happening, what the hobby was all about, really, and in the press. And you've really got to keep that message getting across, because a lot of people have not heard about amateur radio. And people say, or young people would say, "Oh, I'm not interested. I can phone Australia on my mobile phone." And I always say to them, "Yes, but who are you going to call?" And they don't know. I say, "You don't know anybody in Australia." And the point I'm making there to them and to anybody is that amateur radio is a community, a worldwide community. And I've done a lot of traveling in my time. I've been all over the world and visited many countries. And I've spoken to hams all over the world in my time. And I've made some really good friends because of that. And I've visited people or visited them when I've been in those countries. And it's great. And it's that international friendship. It's that common bond which we share. And we're able to have enjoy the communication with people in all these different countries. And I think that in the future, ways that facilitate that and make it a lot easier to do that and have those contacts and conversations is very important. And it's not just a case of going on 20 meters and getting a report. "Oh, I was 5 and 8 in the Canary Islands, and yesterday I was 5 and 7. There can be much more to it than that if you want the conversation and are prepared to download this app, which is free, from the Play Store. So there we are. Okay, back round to you.
Yeah, well, I pretty much agree with everything you said, Ian, and we've gone quite long, so I'm going to close it up here. But I agree 99% with what you said. It is about doing things, get involved. It's another tool in your arsenal, and in fairness, just have a look. It isn't going to cost you any money. So, yeah, you've done a good job at selling it to us, Ian. And as I probably said earlier, I know of at least 3 of the ICQ presenters that actually use this and are very happy with it. So I'd like to thank you for coming along and talking to us tonight, Ian. And
you're very welcome.
Yeah, and say 73s to you.
And what will be the next big thing? That's the point.
Well, we'll have to wait and see, won't we? But there will be something.
Exactly. Maybe it'll be invented by an English student.
Well, maybe, but
or British.
Well, maybe, but it depends on let's just wait and see what comes along, and because there always will be something new. So thank you very much, Ian, for a very interesting conversation tonight.
The ICQ Amateur Ham Radio Podcast, serving the amateur ham radio community fortnightly since 2008.
Well, Dad, it's great to see the Peanut app back from the dead there. There was a rumour for a while that it might disappear, but great there for Ian able to give us an update on what's going on with the Peanut app for Dstar, wasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was, Colin, and Ian's very excited about some of the things that Peanut allows him to do, and I've certainly tried it, and I'd say there's at least 3 of the ICQ presenters that I know have been on it, And we're actually meeting up with, I believe, Scott when we're over in Chicago, who I had a chat with on Peanut. So all in all, quite good, I suggest, Colin.
Exactly. So guys, let's say go along and check out the app there, and as I say, hopefully it's something of enjoyment for you. Well, a couple of bits of feedback come through on the ICQ podcast website, so we'll have a look at those. First from Brad Myers, Kilo Delta 2 Oscar Foxtrot. It says, "Hi all. Responded to the discussion on licensing requirements. I remember hearing that in the old Soviet Union, the amateur radio candidates had to build his own rig and have it critiqued by a local committee of amateurs before going on the air. And he quite likes the idea, and he supports it becoming the cornerstone of the US extra class license. In terms of competency, it seems to me that the rubber really hits when it comes to building." So he said that's quite an interesting food for thought there, Dad, about actually testing amateurs' ability to build kits.
Yeah, certainly is. And in fairness, I think, and I haven't checked every country in the world, but I think the UK is only the only place where you have to prove and do practicals to pass your test. And part of the intermediate is you build something. We build a small receiver with the group, but in fairness, it would be nice to see more people do this sort of thing. I agree with him, it'd be nice, but a lot of countries have moved away from it because it's a lot of black box operators these days.
Yeah, true. Always, I always joke and say, the most important training, I think, is to train your harmonics into carrying your amateur radio gear around rallies. So as you're buying up more and more stuff, I think that's probably the most important one we need to do first. Hi. There you go. Anyway, next piece of feedback here. Bob Terry, VK2 India Kilo Tango. Obviously they're from Australia. It says, "Hi guys, heard the discussion around the Gutenberg project, and has anyone had a look at AmericanRadioHistory.com? He said he found this link a few months back, and it carries a lot of media magazines, but also some of the electric and ham radio magazines. Hope you find that of interest." So Bob, I'll try and get that link on the show notes page for this episode as well, so everyone can check that out. So there you go, Dad. AmericanRadioHistory.com has a collection of magazines for the hobby, which would be great news.
Yeah, certainly checked them out. And there's lots of these online websites that are publishing lots of bits and pieces that are very interesting. We talked about the Amateur Radio Handbook, I think, from 1930s, that was written by the gentleman from Collins Radio. And I'm starting to read it, and it's really, really, really interesting because it's obviously from a different time. Yeah, we hear all about the Amateur Radio Parity Act in the States, and then you read this book from the 30s and it goes, "Oh, just have a word with your neighbour. They'll allow you to sort of hang your antenna support off their house. It won't be a problem." How times moved on.
Oh, exactly. I was also thinking as well as we were saying that, it shows the depth of magazines and the high street newsagents, doesn't it? The fact that, we used to have these massive racks of all sorts of hobbyist magazines across all sorts of hobbies years ago. And now we're sort of obviously, those are decreasing. We've got more websites, but there is still that desire, isn't there, to look at the magazine in one form or another, and probably shows the popularity of these old websites. I'd say for those magazines, it does show the change in times, as you say.
Yeah, and what it actually does is shows you where we've come from. I've had no experience of spark gap transmitters, but reading about spark gap transmitters, you go, "Oh yeah, fine." I kind of get a bit more of a knowledge of the hobby, and I'm never going to use it, but it's interesting to know where we came from. So some of these old books are really, really good, and I think it was Dan Romachek who said the science of antennas never changes, so they're well worth a read, some of these old books.
Oh, certainly so. Right, guys, well, as always, we'd ask you to get involved, so you can send along your comments and ideas. Go to ICQpodcast.com and click on the contact us page, and you can drop along your mail of anything you've heard in the show you'd like to raise. You're more than welcome to. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to our newsletter on the ICQ Podcast website, and also to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ICQ Podcast. We'd like to thank our donors this episode to keep the show advert free. So that was Keith Scholtman, Kilo Romeo 7, Romeo Kilo, and Richard Perzina, Golf 8 India Tango Bravo. Thanks well to Ian Abel, Golf 3 Zulu Hotel India, for taking part in our discussion on the Peanut for the Dstar App. And our roundtable contributors, Leslie, Golf 0 Charlie India Bravo, Edmund, Mike 0 Mike November Golf, and Ed, DD5 Lima Papa, for being involved there on the roundtable. Right, I'm just going here, check, and the only thing left is whether or not you've got milk in the fridge and a tea bag ready to make Mrs. B a cup of tea.
Well, Mrs. B went shopping today, so there is milk in the fridge, Colin. I'm okay on that one. She'll be in from work shortly. We'll make Mrs. B a nice cup of tea, and we'll find her a chocolate biscuit. And as I say, hopefully some of you will actually meet up with her later in the year. She's going to Newark with us, so she'll be at the National Ham Fest in the UK. So that's a good one, isn't it, Colin?
Yeah, no, it means you and I are going to have to behave. But yeah, it will be good to have her there. Well, look, I'm going to leave your head off, mate, a cup of tea. And as I say, we'll do this all again in a fortnight's time. 73 is all. Continue to enjoy the hobby.
73.